shared.
Hello, my name is Martha Verde. I was born in 1961, and in 1965, I was 4 years old.
Um,
Well, I remember being a little kid, and I was playing with my brother outside, and my mom called me inside, and we were watching the funeral, and I didn't really understand it until my mom said, we were looking at his children, and she said, "Now those little kids don't have a dad," and I
oh,
remember crying.
wow. Fascinating.
The honest truth is, I didn't know anything about it.
Oh,
I didn't know anything about Martin Luther King. I didn't remember he was assassinated. I just learned about it when I was in school.
do you know
Um, not that I can remember. I think maybe they, from things that I heard. I mean, I don't remember firsthand, but I remember them thinking that that was more like something in the South, and they weren't really that interested in it.
Okay. Vietnam War.
Yes, my Uncle Donald.
Oh.
He did. He served. I remember the day he left. He was in the
Mm.
Navy. And I remember the day he left and how everybody was crying, and I couldn't understand why they were crying. And I remember the day he came back because he came to visit us,
Mm.
and he brought us something back from Vietnam each because my I had three brothers, and he brought us each something back from Vietnam,
Oh.
like a little toy or something that they play with there.
Um. Vietnam.
He was in Vietnam for 3 years.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, he was in there for 3 years, and he doesn't like to talk about it.
Mm. Well, I
He
don't blame
even to
him.
this day he doesn't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Well, like I said, I was a little kid, so I don't really remember that much about it.
Mm.
I remember that in Cleveland, that there wasn't, there weren't that many problems in
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland, except during the Huff Riot time, which I only remember hearing the grown-ups talk about it, but I didn't even really know what that was.
Oh.
And I remember them again, my family thinking like that was a Southern problem, and it really wasn't a problem up here in Cleveland where we live.
Oh.
Well, I mean, when I look back at pictures, like the hairstyles,
Yeah.
and my brothers had like bell bottom pants,
Mm.
and my dad worked for a bank, so although he grew his hair long. For someone who worked in a bank, I remember that he was the vice president of a bank, and I remember that like people always wanted him to cut his hair, and he's like no, and so he grew his hair not really super long, but like maybe down to like his chin, and that was like really weird. He drove a motorcycle to his bank
Oh,
too.
wow.
And my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. I remember listening to the music from the '60s. We had a record player. We had like a it was like a it looked like a dresser,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a record player in it, and so you kept your records in part of it, and then there was like a turntable, and I remember my mom would play all the records because she had tons of records, and and those are the main things I remember
Did you
about
love
it.
the music then?
I did. I liked the music then. I didn't understand the words to the music.
Mm.
Like there was a song. I don't even remember the name of the group, but the girl, her name was Gracie Slick, and I remember she sang a song, and it was all about drugs. And I remember singing it like in the car, like when your
Yeah.
mom sings along. And I didn't know what it was all about. The whole thing was about being on drugs, and I didn't realize that until I was like an adult.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so like I heard the music and I liked it, but I didn't understand it.
Mm.
Um, I didn't really know that much about drugs. I mean, no one in my family that, as far as I knew, took drugs.
Mm.
I don't really know anything about drugs. Drugs were kind of like separate from my family, so I didn't grow up around that culture.
Okay. Well,
Well, like I said, only my dad. Like my dad listened to like a lot of the music from that time period, and my mom both. But I think my dad, like he went to concerts and things where my
mm.
mom stayed home with the kids, and my dad and his friends would go to the concerts.
So he just loved the
He
music.
loved music. Yeah, he
Okay.
did. Yeah. Again, I was a little kid, and I never even heard of Malcolm X until I was like in college.
Oh, wow.
So I never knew anything about him.
You guys wise or?
You know what? Every time when I ask him, I wanted him to actually come here to school to speak,
Mm,
and because he lives in Pennsylvania, and he doesn't like to talk about it. He said that the things that he saw there are like forever ingrained in his brain, and when he talks about him, it brings up all those feelings
brings up all
and
the
yeah,
memories and
all
bad
those memories. And
times.
he said it was the most horrible time in his life. And
Mm,
he said, why would anybody want to talk about the most horrible time in your life?
yeah,
So I have to respect that, but I do want to. I mean, I would love to know the details, but
yeah.
I don't know.
But I don't blame him, you know.
Right.
He's-
Well, again, I was a little kid, but
yeah,
my parents had friends, and they would all dress. I mean, hippies were not. I mean, it was part of the society. It wasn't like it was like
yeah.
just like nowadays kids who sag their pants. So like you see it, people who do it, but
Hmm.
I didn't do it. My dad, he used to wear platform shoes
Mm,
and big bell bottom pants. He used to, do that, but he had a job. So, the hippies were all like free and love and peace. And the only reason I know that is from what I've learned in school and, in documentaries and things.
mm. Um,
I remember that when we got a color television,
mm.
we were like the only people that had one. And my grandparents, his parents, bought us a color television. And that like changed everything.
That just changed everything for
Everything,
you
because
guys.
when Kennedy was assassinated, we had a black and white television, and it was like a box, and it had like a little, like a round. I don't know if you've seen those old TVs. It
I've
had like
seen
a
them.
little round
They had the
thing on
antenna
it.
sticking out.
Yep. Yes. Exactly. And then when he graduated from John Carroll, we got a color television, and it was like the most amazing. And it wasn't clear like how it is now. We couldn't stop watching. It was like the most amazing thing. It didn't have a remote control either. We had to get up and change the channels
Oh God.
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, because the '60s we didn't have microwaves.
Yeah.
I mean, we had one telephone in our kitchen. I remember we weren't allowed to talk on it for more than like 5 minutes. We had no microwaves. There were no VCRs, no DVR, nothing. We just had record players.
Like
The
cartoons.
Flintstones. We
Mm.
watched the Flintstones a lot. That was like,
That's the best thing
oh
ever.
yeah,
Then.
the Flintstones was great. We watched. I mean, we watched all the old cartoons like Mickey Mouse and all that kind of stuff. But there weren't a lot of channels. Like
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock was the news, and then after the news they played the national anthem, and then all TVs went out.
Oh wow.
So there'd be like, it's snow, like when you're turning the channel and it's just like all
Oh, and
fuzzy
it's all
gray.
fizzy. And,
All the channels went out, and we had 3, 5, 8, 61, and 43. There were only 5 channels.
mm. Was on which
Oh
channel?
no, I can't remember that. No, not
Oh,
not
okay.
at all. I just remember.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome, Owen.